Hey there, hunters, and welcome to the Gunners Guild. With Monster Hunter World on the horizon, I figured it's time to quickly discuss starting out as a gunner at launch. I'll be going over some of the basic information and tips to get you gunning right away, and hopefully not have to worry about some of the common complaints about gunning from the get-go. This shouldn't take too long. So, in case you didn't know already, in Monster Hunter World, armor is no longer separate from Blade Masters to Gunners. Now you can use whatever armor you want for all your different weapon types. If you notice on the weapon stat screen, Blade Master weapons will now say something like adds additional defense, and Gunner weapons will say adds additional elemental resistance. This is basically how the armors are balanced between the two. So Blade Masters will still have more armor than Gunners, and Gunners will have more elemental resistance. One of the biggest complaints people had before was that you had to craft all Gunner armor to start gunning, leaving you little to no room to make Blade Master weapons and armor if you ever wanted to use those. And with being 11 Blade Master weapons and only 3 Gunner weapons, it was pretty much practical just to make Blade Master armors if you were just on the fence of what kind of weapons you wanted to use. Nobody wanted to burn all their early game materials on making Gunner armors and weapons if they weren't really going to be interested in them. Anyway, all that is out now, so don't worry about crafting multiple armor sets. Now, as far as specific armors to craft, I can't really say because the game's not out yet. But pretty much you're just going to be stacking attack and affinity for the early game. Most gunner skills aren't available until high rank, and they're really not that good in the early rank anyway. Alright, moving on. Other complaints about gunning early game is that the ammo costs and combat materials became too expensive to maintain and drained all your early game resources. Thankfully, this has also been remedied. On each of the hunts you start in, the supply box will have ammunition for you if you need it, which will include a stack of normal 2s, pierce 1s, spread 1s, and files for bows. The stack of ammo should be enough to get you through most hunts early on. You probably don't even need to buy ammo right away. And the files for bows will be great if you ever run out of coatings or just need to make some on the fly. You only get 30 files, but trust me, that's way more than you'll ever use on a hunt. Now, also, gathering materials on the map is no longer a huge burden, and most things can be gathered as you just walk around looking for your target. Gunner materials gather in bulk now, offering you 10 to 20 combat materials per plant, allowing you to craft a lot of ammo very fast. So you shouldn't ever run out of ammo on a hunt, or need to buy much ammo too. One of the best things now is that slicing shots give you 20 combat materials per plant. And slicing shots are beastly, let me tell you, especially early game. Most monsters won't survive more than probably 30 to 50 slicing rounds early on, so you should have no problem keeping up with those on a hunt. Especially on top of the supplied ammo you get. You really shouldn't have to worry about ammo at all. Of course, it's always a good idea to have your ideal ammos on hand when you start a hunt, because then you get that free auto load once you start. Bows will probably still be more practical just to buy your power coats early on, just because the coatings are a little bit more stingier as you craft them. You only get about 3 coatings per plant that you find, which is still good, especially for bows, but you're probably not going to use your 50 power coats in a hunt early game anyways. Monsters are probably going to take 20 to 30 tops. Power and blast coats can be crafted fairly easily on a hunt, but like I said, it's a little bit more stingier and you're probably just better off finishing the hunt and buying more coatings. They're really not that expensive. Now, bow users also won't have access to dash juice early on, which can be pretty critical for bows at times. But thankfully, you can get those wiggly worms from the logs that can be found all over the maps, which grant you half stamina consumption for about 2 to 3 minutes. We haven't seen whether or not Mega Dash Juice is in the game, but it wasn't in the Combine list in the beta, so it might not be. But even if it's not, 50% stamina consumption is still ridiculous for how efficient the bows are now. It pretty much feels like infinite anyway. And with Dragon Piercer for bows, it's pretty stamina efficient, so Dash Juice probably isn't going to be as mandatory as it used to be. Now also, a part of what makes gathering so much easier is that nodes you see will show up on your map. And when you open up your map, you can sort out all the little icons and just show your gathering nodes. So while you're chasing a monster or going from zone to zone, you can see what nodes are on your path and you can grab those on the go. It's really going to make ammo a non-issue even from the first hunt. So some of the things you need to keep an eye out for when you're on your hunts are latch berries for piercing shots, needle berries for spread shots, slash berries for slicing shots, bomb berries for cluster shots, flame nuts for gunpowder 2, which is used to upgrade ammos like normal pierce or spread from rank 1 to rank 2 shots, and blaze nuts for gunpowder 3, which is used to upgrade those level 2 ammos to level 3 ammos. For bows, Nitro shrooms for power coats is really all you need. Now, if you're determined to play a gunner weapon, but you don't know which one to pick, here's kind of my brief rundowns on which weapons you should choose and what you should look for in the early game. Bows. Bows are excellent for beginners. You only really have to worry about buying power coats from the vendor, and unfortunately Dragon Pierce spam is kind of the way to go with bows, so mechanically there's not a whole lot to it. It should be really easy to pick up a bow and just get to hunting. Bows early on should focus on raw damage. That's where the bulk of your damage will be from anyway. Bows never really have status elements except for blast, so keep your fingers crossed for Dodo Gama's low rank bow. But basically, you're just going to use whatever has the highest attack stat. And then you always have to make sure it can equip power codes. That's like priority. If you can't equip power codes, just drop the bow. Heavy bowgun. Probably the next step up. Managing ammo types and the slow mobility can be kind of rough, but the power behind it makes up for any of its shortcomings. Slicing shots and spread shots will probably be your go-to here. If you don't like moving in molasses, this weapon may not be for you. Now, of course, when you're picking up a heavy bowgun early on, you need to see which special ammo it will have, Wyvern Heart or Wyvern Snipe. Then after deciding that, you also need to check to make sure you can fire good ammos with little to no recoil, and have good reload speeds. Slicing shots and spread shots should be your priority, of course. Anything with recoil of average or low should be fine, and reload speed should always be at normal or fast. If you find a heavy bowgun you like, but doesn't meet the recoil or reload requirements, you can equip mods to make sure that you fall into those parameters. Light bowgun. Probably the hardest but safest to use. Light bowgun doesn't really excel at damage, but rather status and survivability. The mines and low ammo clips require good positioning to use properly, since you have to stop and reload frequently, and make sure the monster actually is over those mines. You're also going to need to learn status thresholds for each of the monsters to make sure that you're playing status gunner effectively if you go that route. But light bowgun can play at a much safer distance than the other two gunner weapons, so you always have more time to react, which is great for beginners. Picking up an early light bowgun can be tricky. You either have to go the same path as heavy bowgun and just stick to good raw shots with adequate recoil and reload speeds, or you can try to find one with elemental shots. Those are going to be more situational to the monster you're fighting, so it's not always a good idea to go that route early on, unless you really know what you're doing. In either case, you need to focus on rapid fire. Something like Pierce 1s, normal 2s, slicing shots, or elemental shots should be on your priority list for rapid fire options. And lastly, keeping your resources manageable early on has to do a lot with your efficiency. Making sure you always stick to critical distance with gunner weapons, and always aim for those weak spots. Gunner's number one priority is always to make the most out of each of their shots, since they are limited. Now, perfection isn't required, so don't worry about that too much, but obviously the better you are, the less ammo you're going to waste. Gunning is less about complex controls and more about learning the monster, your positioning, and your accuracy. There's not much to teach someone about how to gun, it's just point, shoot, and practice. And that's about it for starting out as a gunner. There's really nothing to worry about. But if you have any other questions or concerns, please let me know. Or you can stop by the Monster Hunter Gathering Hall Discord, and we can answer whatever questions you may have. Thanks again, guys, and good luck out there.